most powerful person in the room is rarely the loudest. In fact, the people who speak the least often control the most. Yet silence is one of the most misunderstood forms of power in the modern world. Most people interpret silence as weakness. They believe silence means uncertainty. They assume silence means someone has nothing valuable to say. But in reality, silence often signals the exact opposite. Silence is rarely emptiness. Silence is control. The modern fear of silence. Observe almost any conversation today. People rush to speak. They interrupt each other. They fill every moment with words. Silence makes them uncomfortable. The moment a pause appears in conversation, someone tries to erase it. They explain more than necessary. They justify their opinions. They talk faster, louder, longer. But this behavior rarely signals confidence. More often, it reveals insecurity. When people feel uncertain about their value, they try to compensate with noise. They believe speaking more will increase their importance. But the opposite is often true. The person who speaks the most frequently reveals the most. Their fears, their priorities, their weaknesses, and information is power. The one who listens collects it. Why powerful people speak less. Individuals who are comfortable with silence behave very differently. They do not rush. They do not feel pressure to fill every moment. Instead, they observe. They watch the room. They measure reactions. They allow others to reveal themselves. This behavior creates a psychological advantage, because while others are speaking, explaining, and defending themselves, the silent observer is learning, and learning builds leverage. This principle has existed throughout history. Philosophers and leaders have long recognized that restraint often creates influence. The Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, Marcus Aurelius, believed discipline begins with control over one's impulses. Speech is one of the most powerful impulses humans possess, and those who control it often control far more. Silence creates psychological space. Silence has an unusual effect on people. It creates space, and most individuals are deeply uncomfortable with psychological space. When a conversation pauses, many people feel an urge to fill it immediately. They begin explaining themselves. They share more information. They reveal thoughts they never intended to express. But the person who remains calm in silence allows this process to unfold naturally. They do not force the conversation. They allow the other person to expose their perspective, their motivations, their concerns. In negotiations, leadership, and strategy, this ability becomes extremely powerful, because every word someone speaks reveals something about them, and the person who listens carefully gains a deeper understanding of the situation. Silence protects strategy. Another reason powerful individuals speak less is simple. Silence protects strategy. When people announce every plan, every ambition, and every idea publicly, they invite interference. The moment a goal becomes public, it attracts opinions, criticism, doubt, and distraction. But silence protects progress. It allows ideas to develop without outside pressure. Many of the most significant achievements in history began quietly. Before success becomes visible, it is often protected by privacy. This pattern has appeared across philosophy, science, and leadership. The German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once suggested that those who truly build something meaningful often spend long periods in solitude and reflection. Because deep thinking rarely happens in noise, it happens in quiet. Silence builds mystery. Silence also creates something else: mystery. Humans are naturally curious about what they cannot fully understand. When someone constantly explains themselves, their behavior becomes predictable. Predictability reduces influence, but when someone speaks carefully and selectively, their words carry more weight. Each statement becomes intentional, each response becomes measured, and people begin to pay closer attention. Mystery creates authority, not because silence is manipulation, but because restraint signals confidence. Someone who knows their value does not feel pressure to constantly prove it. Silence and self-mastery. At its core, silence reflects discipline. The Swiss psychologist Carl Jung wrote extensively about self-awareness and the process of understanding one's inner world. True self-knowledge requires observation, and observation requires quiet. People who constantly speak rarely have time to reflect, but those who learn to pause develop deeper awareness. They notice their own reactions, their emotions, their impulses. Over time, this awareness creates self-mastery, and self-mastery creates stability. The difference between silence and passivity. It is important to understand something. Silence does not mean avoidance. Silence does not mean fear. Silence does not mean someone lacks conviction. True silence is deliberate. It is a strategic pause, a moment of observation before action. There are times when speaking is necessary. Leadership sometimes requires clear communication, but effective communication becomes stronger when it is balanced with restraint. Words gain power when they are used intentionally. The quiet confidence of results. Ultimately, the most powerful reason to embrace silence is simple. Results speak louder than explanations. People who constantly talk about their plans rarely complete them, but those who work quietly often produce surprising outcomes. Progress does not need constant commentary. Growth does not require an audience, and achievement rarely happens through endless discussion. It happens through consistent action. Silence allows that action to remain focused. Final reflection. In a world that rewards constant noise, silence can feel unusual. But silence is not weakness. Silence is discipline. Silence is patience. Silence is observation. And those who learn to use silence wisely often discover something important. Real power rarely announces itself. It moves carefully. It observes quietly. And when the moment is right, it acts deliberately, because the loudest voice in the room is rarely the one in control. The person who truly understands power is often the one who speaks the least.